Dialogue scenes have always been one of Quentin Tarantino's greatest strengths. This guy makes listening to people talk as fun as it gets.
Well, that is one way to say it.
And I don't seem to be the first one to notice this. There are plenty of videos out there that focus on the writing in these scenes. However, while I agree that Tarantino deserves praise for his writing, film is a visual medium, and there is more to these scenes than spoken words. There is camera work, blocking, acting, lighting, editing, imagery. And in my opinion, just as much as Tarantino has mastered the art of writing dialogue scenes, he has also mastered the art of directing them. So what happens if we take a scene about people talking and leave out the talking, and shift our attention from what we hear to what we see? Tarantino's love for the Western, samurai and martial arts genre is well known, and what these genres have in common is that their narratives are usually constructed around situations of physical confrontation. A struggle for dominance between the different characters and factions. Given Tarantino's affinity for gunslingers and swordmasters, it's not surprising that themes like that can be found all over his movies, including the dialogue scenes.
You embarrassed me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
While many other directors and writers tend to play their strongest climactic dialogue scenes for emotional drama, sometimes to great effect, Tarantino rarely, if ever, does that. Instead, his most memorable dialogue usually depicts and defines power relations.
Give me that book. Are you gonna put it away? I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want with it. Well, then I'm afraid I'm gonna have to keep it.
He shows us how they evolve, how they shift, how people fight over a dominant position, how characters behave when they are on the attack.
What he fought for was dignity in defeat and against the unconditional surrender.
Or being pushed into a corner.
No. You done got me talking politics.
Sometimes the confrontation is decided before it has even begun.
Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa.
Sometimes it ends in a draw, to be continued later. But no matter the outcome, these scenes are dripping with tension. Okay, so let's look at an example.
What's it gonna be, Doc? Huh?
Stephen, played by Samuel L. Jackson, is the right-hand man and the slave of Calvin Candy, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. He has Calvin's complete and utter trust, taking care of his business and his house. But even though Stephen talks back to him in a vulgar manner,
Hello, my head.
he doesn't seem to be a particularly imposing or dominant figure. He is always shaky and imprecise in his movement. He needs a stick to walk. He is always struggling to keep up with his environment. In combination with his vulgar jokes, this makes the impression of, like, a court jester. That is, until we get to this shot.
What is the matter?
This shot is 20 seconds of awesome. Okay, so what did we just see here? At the beginning of the shot, Stephen is alone in the library. Even though we only see the backside of his head, he is already dominating the frame due to the shot size. Notice how the background being out of focus adds weight to the character compared to the environment. When Calvin enters the room and the depth of field shifts in his favor, the entire background comes into focus as well, so he doesn't stick out as much. Also, the same shot that shows Stephen's head in a close-up shows Calvin in a long shot, making him appear smaller and less relevant in comparison. This impression gets turned to 11 when the camera then circles around Stephen. Even though Calvin moves in the direction of the camera's movement, he gets pushed out of the frame, which now completely favors Stephen, literally revealing his true face to the audience. No longer is he the shaky old fool being overstrained by his surroundings. He is now in control of them, dominating them. Compare this to scenes from other movies where showing characters in a sitting position implies them being inferior, defenseless, being unable to fight back. Here, however, placing Steven in his armchair has the opposite effect. It empowers him because it makes his physical weakness disappear. The conversation hasn't even really started yet, but within a few seconds Tarantino already managed to communicate who is going to be the true villain of the movie, all through imagery. But of course the scene doesn't end there. Let's look at how this exchange is structured. The main body of the following dialogue can be split into 4 different parts in terms of shot size. At first we watch the conversation from the outside, as Calvin hasn't grasped onto the situation yet. But as Steven's arguments start to get to him,
No, not yet, but they go.
ain't Bob Diddley.
Tarantino positions the camera between the two, making the distance between them disappear and heightening the intensity. As Steven ends his explanation, the perspective switches to a profile, moving the camera even closer to the characters, and the characters even closer together, confronting them as it gets more and more difficult for Calvin to argue. When Calvin is finally convinced, after Steven has countered his last doubts, the camera unites them again in this shot. The different stages of this progression are initiated by Steven,
Thank you, Stephen. You're welcome, Calvin.
showing that he's in control of the conversation. Steven's superiority is also conveyed by the body language of the actors. Notice how Calvin's constant movement, exposing his insecurity,
Where you getting all this?
is contrasted by Steven's almost statue-like stillness throughout the scene. Or how Calvin subconsciously imitates his posture. Another interesting aspect of the scene is the blocking and the character's positioning in the frame. At the beginning, Calvin enters the shot on the right side of the screen. Here he is smug, full of himself, trying to embody the intellectual, superior businessman he considers himself to be. But you can literally see his composure fade away as he enters the left side of the screen. This is his place until Steven makes him see the trap he is walking into, at which point he switches back to the right side. If you compare the beginning and the ending shot, there is also a nice progression from imbalance, because the hierarchy between the characters is flipped, to balance, because Steven has led Calvin back to being in control. I will stop here, but there is more to discover and analyze here. You could look at the scenery and the props, for example. What is it with these candles? How are they placed and why? What do they tell you about this conversation, about the characters? I think the scene shows really well how Tarantino's mastery of dialogue goes beyond his skill of merely writing it. Directing scenes like this is something he has gotten better and better at over the course of his career, in my opinion. So next time you watch one of his movies and the talking starts, consider watching just as closely as you are listening.
That's a great idea, Kato.